Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm your host, Liz Heiman, bringing the rescue boat to your sales challenges. In this ever-changing sales environment, it's easy for leaders to feel adrift. We're here to be the beacon guiding you to success. Each episode, I'm joined by top sales experts and practitioners who have navigated this waters and come out victorious. Together, we'll uncover the insights and strategies that will help you hit your sales targets and grow your business. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Heiman, and I'm here with your Sales SOS podcast crew, Darryl Praill, Renee Bigelow, Bowen, and Brynne Tillman. And these last couple of episodes, we've been talking about kicking off 2025. Like, how are we going to kick off this year? So if you didn't listen to the last two episodes, we talked about what do we need to do to be better leaders? And we talked about building a culture, a sales culture that will help drive revenue, drive success. And now we're going to talk about goals. So we set goals. Everybody has goals, or they're pretty close to knowing what their goals are for 2025. They have goals, and maybe they're dividing them up into smaller goals. And everybody, it's Darryl said in one of the earlier podcasts, I'm going to lose weight this year. I'm going to do it, right? So what keeps you on track? So let's talk a little bit about how do you move from we have these goals to 6 months from now, still being on track with those goals, 9 months from now to finishing the year, having actually hit your revenue goals. How do we do that?
I'll start with the one that everybody probably remembers, but it's always good to remind is a lot of those goals are really big, right? Like, you put this big number up, your whole team is like, can't believe this is the goal they gave us. I've had 4 conversations about that in this last week, where I've had a marketing team member call me and be like, I can't believe this is what my boss, like some of them former clients, so like, this is what they gave me. Like, where did they get this KPI, right? Like, where did this goal come from? You have to eat the elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah. And I think that this is super important, because often we come up with goals and we think, and they're arbitrary. I call it wagging, right? We're wild ass guessing. I did it again, Darryl. I beat you to cursing. We're wild ass guessing our sales team, and we're saying, go do it, without any real thought about what does it actually take for the marketing team to do this? What does it actually take for one salesperson to sell $1 million or $2 million or $5 million worth of revenue? What resources are required? How much time does it take to move a $500,000 sale from the top of the funnel to the end of the funnel? And all of those sales, if there were 10 of them that were moving down the funnel to get to that one, how much time did each one of those that came out of the funnel take? And I don't think that most companies, they're really clear about exactly what the inputs are for manufacturing. They're really clear about the inputs around engineering and what it takes, but they are not really clear about what it takes for the sales and marketing side of things. So they just make up a number and say, go do it.
Okay, I got 2 thoughts. And I'm building on this. This is an awesome conversation. Number one, when finance, because it's usually finance, is doing the modeling for the year, what is our growth going to be? What is our headcount? What is our budgets by department? So they're going to communicate that to the board or the stakeholders or the shareholders or the investors or all the above. And then they communicate down to the organization, which is why marketing knows now you need to make 42% more leads, because magically you couldn't do it before, but now you do.
You got AI now, Darryl. You got AI.
I know we have AI. There should be no problem with fewer staff because you have AI. All of the assumptions need to be published within the organization, and there needs to be a conversation that takes place in the organization or within the teams where those assumptions are challenged before the model becomes finalized. So that everybody's bought in, they understand. If they don't like it, they have the chance to express themselves. Because I just see this happen over and over and over again. the goals are usually created. I'm going to be bad. People are not going to like me right now. Usually created by a founder or a CEO who's scared of the board. The board gives a wild ass guess, big audacious number, and the CEO says, or the founder says, okay, and just goes back, tail between the legs, and says, we can do it. And then when you do the modeling, you realize that it's just not conceivable. And then you lose staff and you lose morale. So you always go. That's number one. You got to share the assumptions and challenge them and get consensus. Number two, though, because the question here is, what's our plan to stay on goal? I'm a huge advocate of systems such as OKRs, objective and key results, or EOS, enterprise operating systems like big rocks, so that it starts at the company and you constantly build down and you have a chance to do big rocks or objectives that support, those above you and those below you. But you also have a chance to do something that's specific to maybe just your team or just your department. So reviewing those weekly, monthly, quarterly, keep us on plan and keep us aligned. So that come, as Brynne said in a previous podcast, come December 31st, the numbers that I had planned on January 1st are achieved. And if not, we have warnings well before then. So two things: share and challenge the assumptions to get alignment, and then track everything using systems like an OKR or an EOS.
I want to, Chris, are you going to say something?
No.
Okay. I think one of the things that happens, though, also is that when you're talking about OKRs and KPIs with other team members besides the sales team, I think sometimes they're a little bit clearer. And so with sales teams, we tend to want to measure, we want early indicators, we want leading indicators, not lagging indicators, right? So I want to know how many sales calls you made. I want to know how many meetings you had. I want to know, how many emails did you send out, which is good information. If somebody's not making any phone calls or sending any emails or having any meetings, they're not going to sell anything. But there are other things that we need to measure. We need to be looking at how many leads are going in the top of the funnel. If you made 1,000 phone calls and no leads went in the top of the funnel, those phone calls were not worth the time. So we need to have measures along the sales process throughout the funnel that help us be really clear about whether or not we're going to hit our objectives. If you have a 6-month sales cycle and you look at the funnel and you know that right now there's not enough in the top of the funnel to get me to December, there's time to do something about it. But if you're not really measuring that, keeping track of what are the ratios, what is the velocity, how many are actually going to fall out at this point because of this reason, what's changing that's going to make more leads. Like, we have to know this stuff and stay on it, and then help our teams get managed around it. So it's not okay to say, hey, 6 months in, what's your gap plan? It's too late 6 months in to start your gap plan. Go ahead, Brynne. You were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I mean, I love all of this. I think one of the biggest mistakes I see are the wrong KPIs are being given to the sales reps. So leadership is measuring things that are out of the control of the sales reps' activities, right? So there are the activities goals and results goals, and the leadership is focusing way too much on the results goals. I need more of these. Okay, that is not good leadership. The leadership we need more of these. So let's talk about what are the things you're going to do to get there. And so those are the KPIs that I think we need to be focusing on.
Well, one thing about KPI is not necessarily an objective. Too many people confuse the two.
Yes.
That hole you have to be really careful of, right? So I can have a KPI around how many sales calls have I made, but that doesn't necessarily, all that is an indicator. All right. So that's where it gets tricky. And that's why I like systems like OKRs or enterprise operating systems. They actually go into great detail about a KPI versus an objective or a big rock. And the term that Liz used is spot on, the measures. So anyway, just
I was loosey-goosey with the term.
Yeah, I get it. But, it's an easy, here, going back to our discussion we had, well, I think it was 2 or 3 podcasts ago about what should we do. And I said more reading. Go read the books on OKRs and enterprise operating system.
Yeah.
Liz, one of the things that I'll go back to the conversations I had, and I think it kind of fits in with exactly what you were saying, is too often we're giving people a number, right? Here's your number. Here are your numbers for the years. And it kind of stops there in a lot of companies. The putting together of the plan doesn't happen a lot, right? So what's the plan to get to this number? And it's often fear and time, right? Like that's a lot of work. Or I have no idea, but I need you to do it. I have no idea how you're going to get there, but I need you. So like the 4 conversations I had this week were, okay, we know the number. It is what it is at this point. You've been assigned a number. What's the plan? How can we break this down one bite at a time? I like a term that a lot of people, I call it the real estate we can use, because in marketing, there's just no time to not do 2 first, but the more management system for that would be more of like a balanced scorecard. Like there are all the things that we have to address. Here's our number. Here are the things that we can do that address all the things on that scorecard that get us towards that goal, right? Like how they all build as layers. And that takes a lot of time to do, but it really, if it hasn't happened with the number prior to setting the number, January is the right time to sit down and figure out, okay, this is a big number. I've got 12 months. There are a bunch of different ways, not just the months, right? But a bunch of different ways I can be attacking that number. How can I build that into all the activities and things that I do? I think in many instances, we were talking earlier about having people more entrepreneurial. That's where that entrepreneurial spirit can shine. I think it's wonderful to allow an employee to put together, a team member to put together their plan and bring it back to you, because it's their plan, it's their ownership, right? They're much more likely to follow their own plan, and you can say you built it, right? But you have to give some feedback. And then if you have somebody that doesn't know how to do it, you got to help them. Otherwise, you do end up with this like finger pointing at the quarter, at the month, at the 6 months, at the whatever. I gave you a number. I don't understand why you haven't done it. Well, I don't know. You just gave me a number.
Right. Because a number is not a strategy, right? It is not a strategy. A territory plan for a salesperson is what you're talking about, Renee. So, okay, you got this number, sales rep. What are the things that you think you need to do in order to hit that number? And then we can set up KPIs and OKRs and figure out how to turn it into a plan that is then trackable. Like, how are you doing in February? Making progress towards your goal. How are you doing in March? Making progress towards your goal. As opposed to, wow, it's August. Now what are we going to do, right? So the planning and the working the plan and the tracking the progress are one of the things that we can do as a manager, not, again, by beating them over the head with what they promised to do, but by helping them understand how to do it, asking the questions about, you said you were going to do that and you didn't. What happened? Why didn't you do it? Did it not work? Do we need to change the plan? So one, make the plan. Pick the number, make the plan, set the measures. The next is support. How are you supporting and coaching your team all the way through the year to hit those numbers? And Chris, I know you do this. Talk to us more about how do you support your team through the year?
Well, I think the first thing is understanding where they're at and where they're challenged. The one thing I was going to add to the previous portion of the conversation is, way too often when you get these initial plans, they're based on perfection. And you're not going to have a perfectly smooth year. You're not going to have all these things that you thought were going to happen go exactly how you thought they were going to happen and when you thought they were going to happen, whether that's a particular deal, whether that is a particular event, or whether that is overall business climate. So you have to be able to understand where are the places where we're more likely to get blindsided, or where we're more likely to not be able to hit that goal, and understand where those parameters are from a lever perspective. And if something is truly horrible, then what's your plan for how you address it, right? Because trying to do that stuff on the fly is really, really hard, right? It's like trying to build the airplane while you're still in the air. But when you're talking down to the individual level, I really think it comes down to, do you know where they're getting stuck? If you know where they're getting stuck, you can help a whole lot. If they can't even get the initial talk track down, therefore they're not getting any meetings or any deal cycles that are progressing. That's one set of problems. If you get them where they go through the whole middle, they've gotten all the internal stakeholders, they've got the client buy-in, but they have a hard time getting to the close. Okay, that's a different set of skills. I can work with you on that. But understanding where they need the help is, I think, really, really important. And that's where having systems in place, knowing what you need to get done, as we've talked about probably more times than I can count. What's that funnel shape for that individual rep look like, not just for the company?
Liz, that when you talk about the measures, matching the measures to activities, which is exactly what Chris just talked about too. One of the things I think is so important for keeping it on track throughout the year is celebrating any of the wins, right? So if it's somebody who was struggling with the talk track, we know they're not going to get sales just because they got the talk track right. But if we aren't celebrating that they got the talk track right for them, what energy do they have left to tackle the next big thing that they need to? All those little measures where we've given numbers, right? Those are we celebrate those. It doesn't mean if the end result is as Darryl said, if the objective still isn't being met, we still have work to do, but we can celebrate what's happening that's right. And I don't see enough celebration.
I think this is super important. And if we put ourselves in our salespeople's shoes, which sometimes when we become the manager or their leader, we forget how really hard it is. What does it feel like when 90% of the work you do turns into nothing? So if I had 90 conversations and throughout time, they all fell out of the funnel, 90 turns into 10, whatever it is. We aren't used to that in other parts of the organization. We aren't used to having failure be built into our day-to-day lives. We don't get rejected in the accounting department every day. Engineering, it maybe comes the closest, or marketing when they try things that don't work. But for sales, there's a lot of rejection. There's a lot of darn, that isn't going to happen. Darn, that isn't a good fit. I thought it was. Darn, our competitor got in there. And it's not all stuff we can control. So if all you ever do is beat up on your salespeople and you never celebrate their wins, they're going to be so demoralized. It doesn't matter how much you pay them. Eventually, they don't want to do it anymore.
Well, and the beatings don't really work, right? Like, I mean,
Right.
you might get
morale does not increase.
The beatings will continue until morale improves. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't really work, right? Like, that's not how most people find fulfillment in what they're doing, right? Is through, how am I going to get harassed today? No, that's when they start hating Mondays and everything else, because they're not looking forward to it. It's a counterproductive measure. I'm not saying there's not times when you have to have real adult conversations, but there's a way to have those conversations without it becoming this slog that I'm having to constantly feel like I'm on the defensive within my own company, right? I have to deal with a whole lot of other things where I'm where I may not necessarily be on the defensive, but I'm, like I said, I'm getting told no, or I'm getting pushed to somebody else, or I'm doing all sorts of things that I have to tap dance for. Sometimes it's a delivery issue that I have no control over, but I have to answer for it. But I need to be able to make sure I understand those things. And if I'm not celebrating those little small wins on that path, I would probably drive myself insane.
There is a ton of
Or more
research.
insane.
There's a ton of research that shows we are doing about 1/10 of the recognition that we should be doing to keep employees engaged. And it's one of the reasons that engagement is so low. Now, if that's across the board, right, inside a company, that's across the board. Take that to sales, and it's probably about 5x of that, right? I have never seen a culture as easily influenced, or a type of person as easily influenced culturally by celebrations and small gamifications and celebrating wins as a sales team. those are huge culture builders inside of sales. And if we're doing 1/10 of what we need to be doing across the organization, we really need to amp it up in the department where it will be the most effective, right? Like,
there's actually research that goes further than what you're talking about, Renee, where they researched negative leadership, beating up on, always criticizing, and productivity. And they could actually measure productivity decline and differences between positive leadership and negative leadership.
Well, it's very similar to what I always say, like, the sandwich, you say some positive and bring whatever. So you're trying to do it like a 2-to-1, 2 positives to 1 negative, right? 1 hard conversation, 2 little celebrations or positives. That is the 1/10 of what, if you have a hard conversation, like Chris said, like if you have a hard conversation that you need to have, which by the way, that should be private, then you should be having 10 public celebrations so that you can actually get what you need and have the productivity, like you're saying, Liz.
Darryl, what were you going to say?
Yeah, I was going to say, for every leader out there, CEO, head of sales, head of revenue, if your leaders, if you are running a team through intimidation, through yelling, through chastising, through demanding they just do more tasks, work harder, the other guys are doing it, why aren't you doing it? The opposite of that is if you're not celebrating the wins, actively celebrating the wins. And if your response to leadership pressure on you when you're missing your numbers is to do more of the same, get out of the job you're in. CEO, fire that head of sales. I see too many CEOs who the last person they get rid of is the head of sales. And the reality is that they're going to be snookered because they're the revenue person. No, they're causing so much damage. CEOs need to own this, and sales leaders need to be accountable to adapt to the way teams are managed. Exactly as Renee said. The reality is what I see, which is really interesting on a related note on how do we stay on goal, is the whole idea of skills. They'll say you need to do more activities, make more phone calls, send more emails, do more social touches. Well, you know what? Are you helping them develop their skills? And 9 times out of 10, they aren't, because they're afraid there's a budget to it. And the reason there is a budget is because it costs money for really talented people to help your team be successful. But instead of having that battle with the people who hold the purse strings, the CFO, the CEO, the investors, up front, the start of the year, they walk away and they just say, oh, this is what we got. There's no leadership in that. Your job is to go to bat, to develop your team, to make them more successful. And if you do that, that's why you're paid the big bucks. You will reap the results. But if it's any one department in the organization that has a plethora of opportunities to develop their skills, trust me, it's not marketing, it's not product development, it's sales. It's huge. And I just see too many people, too many leaders blowing it or thinking they know better because they sold 22 years ago and nothing's changed. And this is what I did to be successful. So that's my rant. Sorry.
And I just want to say one thing here, because it is really important to assess the skill level of your sales team and to assess the success. The sales team that you have may not have the right skill sets to do the job that you have for them, and they may never be able to do the job that you have for them. So at some point, you are doing them a favor by releasing them from a job in which they are consistently failing. So do your part to make them successful, but don't, again, digging the hole deeper. Just if a salesperson can't do it, they can't do it. And nothing, at some point, it doesn't matter how much training you do, they'll never be able to do it. And it's really hard to know which is which. Is it me failing, or is it the salesperson failing and head's not in it? They just don't like to do this kind of selling. They're really good at closing. They're not good at lead gen. Then we need to ask a question about, do we have the right team? And that's part of getting to goal, is constantly assessing the skill set of the team that you have and whether or not you can develop or not. Chris, I know you're ready. Go.
Well, I think it's also understanding where you're at as a company, because if you're selling to mid-market, or you're selling to small businesses, or you're selling enterprise, those are very different motions. And as companies try to either move up or change who they're selling to for any number of reasons, do you have the right team for that? Do they understand what's going to be required? If you have to go out and hire, how are you hiring for those people? How are you bringing in the right talent? And then still understanding that, hey, I might bring in the right talent. I still have to coach them. I still have to help them through that, right? Like if you're not going on that journey with them, I think you're doing it horribly wrong. And it can be a big emotional toll across the board, but that's the job.
And I think there's
job. Well said. Best words right there. Sorry. That's the job.
I agree. Absolutely agree. I think there's one more piece to this, and that is we tend to meet with our sales team regularly, weekly, daily, twice a week, whatever we do, during which time we talk about what's closing now, what's closing this week, what's closing this month, with the focus on the bottom of the funnel. And if we really want to make sure that they're hitting their plan all the way through to December, we need to work with them at separate times to look at the entire funnel, to look at the progress toward the plan. You can't just throw bits and pieces of that out into regular meetings. You actually have to sit down and assess the funnel regularly, talk about all the leads and what progress is being made and what support is being needed. Talk about the plan that they created and whether that's going to work or not work and what we need to do differently and what support they need to get there. So if we're not continuing that conversation, everybody presents their plan in January, and then all we do is focus on what's closing. And that is not a good way to support your team to success.
Liz, you brought up sales meetings, and I have another big culture thing around those. Somebody mentioned it might have been Chris earlier about dreading Monday, the sales meeting, dreading Monday or whatever. Most of the sales meetings are Monday morning. There is no reason those can't be fun.
That's right.
There is no reason that those can't be fun. Like it is the first thing. If you are like 80% of people and have your sales meeting on Monday mornings or maybe Tuesday morning, that is the beginning of the week. If you have people dreading coming in, dreading leaving that meeting, you have set them up for failure for the rest of the week. Now, nobody comes in super cheerful usually first thing on Monday, right? Like, what if you turn that around and you had a fun meeting? You can talk about hard things in the same meeting that you have some fun, right? Like you can have a much better reaction and willingness to participate in a hard conversation if there was some fun first. It floors me how many people make those like serious and stick and everything. Yeah, there's probably some stick that needs to happen or whatever, or lighting some fires or whatever, but you can light fires fun.
Well, so here's a typical sales meeting, right? We're going to go over the bottom of the funnel. Everybody sit here while I, the head of sales or the CEO, whoever's running the meeting, goes through all the bottom of the funnel for everybody and scolds everybody about why they're not going to close that deal or why that deal didn't close yet. And everybody has to sit there and listen to everybody else's bottom of the funnel discussion, which has nothing to do with them, and then worry about being chastised or embarrassed in front of the whole team. If I had to go to that meeting, I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, but like imagine the same meeting, whatever happened last week that was positive. If you started that meeting, start the meeting with music, make it fun to walk in, right? Something inspirational, whatever fits your team. Some people start with great quotes. Some people start with music, whatever. Some people start with a like internal game, like a fun, like break the ice 2 or 3 minute kind of thing. But then if you're celebrating, again, going back to the culture thing, building in celebrations, what happened last week before you get to what may not happen this week or what I'm trying to beat you up about, right? Like we're all in a little bit, at least I got some recognition, even if I got like feet to the fire on something. Yeah, maybe I need to do. I did at least get recognition for what I did last. Those are just not hard things.
If you want to get your sales team, you want to watch a sales team light up, put a little strategy in there. Say, hey, everybody's having trouble with this objection. Let's come up with some ideas. You get that sales team. Am I right, Chris? You get that sales team brainstorming and strategizing.
Well, I mean, one of the things that we do on our weekly sales meeting is we'll have somebody from one of the service lines or the offerings come in and present their offering and then take questions from the sales team, right? Like who is it that we target? What's our normal price where we end up getting in? Some of these things start out small and get bigger. What's the potential there? What's that typical growth path for your all's typical solution. So it might start with a $50,000 consulting gig that turns into a couple of different projects, which could vary anywhere from, $150,000 to $1 million. And then if we get past that, then we can move it into this other area where maybe it becomes more of a managed service. And this is what that looks like from an ongoing revenue perspective. But it's really being able to have those questions coming from the sales team to the person who owns it helps them, and it helps the sales team, right? Because they get a better feel for what are we hearing in the field, or what do we potentially need to hear in the field. You build the relationship with that person, or at least you now know who to talk to, because in a really large organization, I spend more time trying to track down the person I need to talk to about something more days than I care to admit, right? But that's just the nature of the beast. But being able to really understand how you show up.
So these are the kinds of things that we need to do to keep our sales team moving in the right direction to hit their goals. It takes reinforcement. It takes good planning. It takes tracking the planning. It takes celebrating, enabling, exciting. Right? These are all of the things that we want to do to keep our sales team making momentum toward the goals. Well, hopefully that will help you all have a better time tracking and supporting your sales team to hit goals this year. Thanks for joining us for this segment, for this episode of Sales SOS Podcast.
And that's a wrap of this episode of the Sales SOS Podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope today's episode has equipped you to navigate the sales seas with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Sales SOS Podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on YouTube or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep sailing towards those sales goals. I'm Liz Heiman, your captain here at the Sales SOS Podcast, saying smooth sailing and successful selling.